This is
Yeah.
not more.
Like to call order the Board of Directors workshop for Tuesday, May 6th, 25. Roll call, please.
Brian Parker,
Here.
Kurt Offenbacher,
Here.
Dale Olson,
Here.
Charles
Here.
Chapel.
Here? You hear me? Here.
Oh, here, we got you.
Okay.
From staff, Kyle Roman,
Wendy McKay, Alicia Burgess,
Mark Rammer,
Kelly Strange, Sarah Klein,
Rob Courier, Mitch Wagner, Rob Roder.
Mm-mm.
Thank you. Introductions.
Yep, I think we got that covered.
Yeah, it's got that business. And change to the agenda.
So one addition, if you wouldn't mind, our two financial advisors are on the line with us and would like to give a very short update on the issuance process at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
Hmm.
You want to do that, right?
Yeah,
So
that
we
works.
can just start with
We're
that.
good. Yep. Okay. We'll introduce again then Scott Bauer from Northwest Municipal Advisors and Sean Keats from Barclays. We talked yesterday and we've actually been in pretty constant communication. So we thought we'd have Scott give a brief update on kind of where things are at with the credit side. I think I don't know how you guys are going to split this up, but I'll let them talk about what's actually been happening these days.
Yes, thank you, Kyle. Maybe I'll have Sean, do you want to start off and just kind of give the quick market update? You're on mute, so the market's good.
All good. So yeah, thanks, Scott. And thank you for inviting me to be here. It's honor to be before you. We've been working very diligently on this financing, as you know, and since if you're unless you've been living on a rock, you know that interest rates have been up and down on a pretty wild ride for the last, call it 4 weeks. And at first, the first full week of April, interest rates during that week that tariffs were announced went up as high as 85 basis points. And afterwards, there were some ameliorating words said, and the tariffs eventually were paused. And as a result of that, interest rates have come back down. Net, they are up about 35 to 40 basis points from where they were before this all started. Still a very good market, still very low interest rates from a historical perspective, especially for long-term borrowings such as what you're contemplating. And market is very receptive right now. Deals are getting done with very enthusiastically. A lot of buyer interest, and we expect that there will be a lot of interest for your bonds when we come to market later this month. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
We do have an updated financing sheet that we provided previously with the new rates in it. So I can't remember if I've shared that yet. I can share that with you, and then we have one more checkpoint next week to discuss. Kind of here's our last best guess on where things are going to end up before we actually do the bond sale, which is happening on the 22nd. So rates are up a bit, so the financing costs have gone up a little bit, and we'll make sure you get that information.
Is that bond sale, is that a public thing?
It will be, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes is the short answer. Although
Okay.
something more specific in mind. Yeah. So what will happen is we, Barclays, as your underwriter, will open it up to the bond market, and anybody who wants to place a bid for on the bonds can do so.
And Patty, was your question, can we watch it happen, or we're just
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
I wasn't going to be bidding on anything.
Now, if I may, yes, you can watch it, and we'll make sure that everybody on this call who wants it will get the login information and can see it all happening live.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Be my first time.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess just some further updates. I guess it
one
was
question,
now.
Scott, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Out of ignorance, I guess. But so the day of the sale, you say, okay, you can, for 20 years, here's the rate. You tell them the rate for each different increment.
Maturity.
So you tell them it's going to be 4% or 5 or 3 or.
Yeah. So what happened? Typically, the way most people think about interest rates, so when they go out for a loan is, like a mortgage on your house, and there's just a single rate. But what we actually do is we parse each individual principal payment into an individual bond, and we sell that to different investors. So our job is to find the supply and demand curve for each one of those investors, where they intersect for each maturity, that will clear the market at the lowest rate and give you the lowest interest rate. So we're actually doing a series of interest rates that will blend together, and Scott has those numbers if you want them. But that's how it works in practice.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions before I move on?
How long does that take? Is it a full day event, or what kind of market are we talking about?
Hour and a half.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Popcorn. Better not miss it.
As simple as that. So yeah, 2 Fridays ago, your district staff, Kyle and Sarah, presented in front of 2 rating agencies. So that was Moody's Ratings and Fitch. So Moody's actually has rated the district before, has a current rating on your 2013 bonds. You're rated A1 on their scale. And then Fitch, you don't have any other ratings. So Fitch would be a new rating agency. So we are looking to bring 2 ratings onto these bonds. But it will be dependent on the rating that we get from Fitch. So we do expect to have a Fitch rating on Thursday. And in fact, we're going to have a brief call with them tomorrow. Fitch has kind of done their own work, their own projections, and we're going to kind of talk to them about it and just make sure that we both, I guess, understand and agree with what they are showing. But again, we should get that rating from Fitch on Thursday, and then Monday we expect the Moody's rating. So again, depending on where the ratings come, we'll either stay with only a Moody's rating, or we will include both Moody's and Fitch on the bonds. And then, midweek next week, we would be looking to send out the preliminary official statement out to the investors. And then, as Kyle mentioned, come May 22nd, that would be the bond sale dates, the day when the bonds are sold and the yields and all the terms are locked in. And then about 2 weeks after that, right now, looking at about June 4th, would be the closing where the district would get its funds.
We heard that Moody's at least maybe both do some kind of press release on, if we were to go public, then maybe Fitch would do the same thing, but Moody's at least will have their own press release about our rating. We can either piggyback off that or downplay it, as the case may be, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be receiving a decent rating.
Yeah, I think you're right. The sense we got after their meeting was, at the very least, that you would be at your existing rating, but I think everybody is hopeful for an upgrade. But it seems as though rating agencies are notoriously cautious. So again, we'll have to just see where they come out with their committee. But again, I think it was 2 very positive rating calls that we had.
So we have one more check-in next week before the actual bond sale. We'll make sure you have the latest and greatest numbers going into this thing. But yeah, it's coming right up here. The 22nd will be here before we know it. Thank you both.
Okay, pleasure. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
Thanks. Okay, 2024 financial year in review.
Yeah. Put 24 to sleep, to bed, case may be.
Finally.
Sarah's got this show. Rob's got a few power cost slides he might have stuck in there too. So
You did.
the price.
You totally did. Good job.
Just hand it over.
All right. Well, let's begin with net income. So we budgeted to end the year at 2.2 million in net income to the positive. And if you'll recall, the process used for budgeting from the power standpoint was very conservative. We kind of termed it the extreme planning case. to end us at that 2.2 million in net income. We came in much better than that, much closer to what we coined the expected case. And so our net income was 6.8 million, which is quite a bit better than budget, which we were expecting it to be better than budget, but wanted to plan for the worst. Retail loads never quite recovered from the storm in 2024. So we ended a little under budget on the retail revenue side of things. Surplus power was to the better, once again, due to that conservative extreme case planning position that we took on the budgeting side. And then similarly, purchase power costs, green, they were better than budgeted. Once again, same story on the conservatism built into that budget. Customer support and system maintenance and other, actually, all three of those were pretty close to on budget. We'll talk about a few more details in a couple of slides. So this is just another way of looking at the annual picture. So on the green side, I'm not going to go left and right. On the green side, we've got the revenue. The red charts are the operating expenses. Although we do have a with and without storm impacts there, or we're reflecting both of those scenarios on these charts. There wasn't much of a storm impact on the O&M side of things. That really comes into play on the capital side of things. So a few more details on the O&M side before we move to the capital side. Once again, on the revenue side of things, these numbers do include the 5% retail average rate increase that was implemented on January 1st. And again, it's pretty much the storm and then the loss of one industrial customer that had us ending under in our retail revenue. Here's a picture of the full year, looking at the budgeted numbers, our actual numbers, and then also a comparison to the previous year. I always think it's interesting to compare to the previous year, sometimes more so than budget, because budgets are an educated guess. But many months, the dark green bar, which is the actuals, are higher than the prior year. And this chart was in your materials, so you might be able to read it better in your actual material. So moving on to wholesale revenue, again, due to that conservative approach, we ended much better than budget on wholesale revenue. And then moving to the expense side of things, power and transmission costs, same story here, the conservative planning. There's a lot more kind of behind the scenes on these numbers, but the story is that our budgeting worked well for us and protected us. So that brings us to a gross margin, which again was better than budgeted, closer again to that expected case than the extreme planning case. All right, so customer support and system maintenance costs. We did end up a little bit over on the customer support costs. There are, once again, lots of things going on behind the scenes here. We did experience an increase in our medical costs overall that actually show up throughout the budget. They're in both of these areas, plus on the capital side of things. And then also legal, we did incur legal costs more than budgeted, which also contributed to the overage in this area. And then, so system maintenance was pretty spot on, and that's despite the medical. And also there was that surprise pole attachment project that shows up in the system maintenance costs. That project actually came in under budget, or actually it wasn't budgeted, but it came in under projection. So that was a good way to end the year. So that brings us to operating margin, which is one of the key metrics we focus on, looking at the above revenues and costs, and again, ended up over budget, which is good. That's a positive on this metric. All right, so moving into the capital side of things, this is a similar viewpoint where in the green bars, you can see the funding side of things, and the red bars, you can see the spending side of things. And this is really where you see the difference in the actuals between the with and without storm scenarios. The without storm scenario is just really intended to help you compare or do a more relative comparison to the budget, to see where things were kind of landing, while carving out the storm. But the reality is that the storm did happen, so that's showing the impact or the budget impact of the storm. All right, so major system upgrades, we did come in a little bit under budget. These are the significant projects, upgrading the system. The storm did play a role in that. It took away internal resources from the projects we had planned to complete. Not to say that that wasn't a good use of time, because there was a lot of upgrading that happened as part of that restoration, which shows up in the restoration category here. And you can see that great difference between the actual and budget, and then the with storm actual. Other capital is kind of where we have inventory that's not related to projects, and fleet are probably the two primary categories in there, and we did end a little bit over budget in that category, which kind of offsets the major system upgrades underage. Yeah.
Question, excuse me.
You bet.
I had a question, under other capital.
Mhm.
It's less with the storm than
Yeah.
without. How does
It's-
that work?
It's kind of a reporting thing, Kurt. It's making this all work, but basically more of the materials that were purchased kind of went towards storm costs. Yeah. So to make us reconcile to our bottom line, there is some reporting that goes on, some transferring between categories. And so we did use quite a few materials on the storm, and fewer on regular capital projects.
This with the storm
Mhm.
is 1.2 million less than without the storm. So that moves?
It's a category reporting
I
thing.
think there's some art to what you dedicate was storm related versus not. storm
Exactly.
related.
It's
Yeah,
That was one question. The other one was, I assume up under substations, the 2026 forecast is bumped up. Is that because of that one transformer?
I think that is the potential land purchase out in 2026,
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken. I don't have that in front of me, but
you know what that bump is.
Thought we'd taken land out, I thought there was,
okay.
Is it a couple transformers?
well, it's, that much would have to be the transfer land.
We can get back to you on that.
The transformer like 800.
Okay, so I think it's a placeholder for some land in the Natron area, it's a placeholder. I think that's what it was.
Originally, you know.
So that'll be up for
That's
discussion as we put
maybe-
the budget together for next year.
I was just thinking that transformers a million,
Yeah,
and I don't know how you budget for you budgeted for 1 year, I mean.
I think Doug's got a whole program because you pay for it over for 3
The
years.
transformer has defined deliverables, and we're actually we'll be paying for it over a period of 3 years.
Okay.
There's a certain amount when you have.
That's what I was thinking it might
Yeah.
have been for, but.
Yeah. I think we've got 3 of those coming in the next several years here, or the one we've already ordered plus a couple others.
Essentially,
Doug keeps a long-term forecast of all the major capital equipment, speed and that.
So that brings us to cash reserves. Thankfully, we did finish 2023 stronger, in a stronger cash position than we had budgeted for, which really helped us out through the storm. So we ended with about 112 days cash on hand on the operating side, and including the remaining bar funds, we're at 143. So all in all, a pretty good story on the cash side considering.
Yeah, unplanned $12 million expense, and still landed pretty decent.
Headcount, we ended the year 1 over budget. Which shows up, there's a lot going on once again behind the scenes. It shows up in the customer service area. There was a transfer between operations and customer service, and then the true add is actually an extra lineman for a position that just retired.
He just retired last week, yeah.
Yeah.
Peaches.
So
If you remember, we went a little heavy last year to kind of catch up with storm work and make sure we had somebody in line when the retirement happened.
and it didn't last week.
Yeah. We had a great send off for him. He's a long-term 30-plus-year employee, and his son works for us, and so it was kind of emotional at the party, is what I was told. I wasn't there. I sent a video in.
I figured that would happen.
Yeah, we would send somebody out.
So how does this convert into the dollars and cents? All in all, not a bad story looking at the actuals without storm compared to budget. A little under budget overall, which is interesting given the challenges on the medical claims and insurance side of things. And then, of course, the storm kind of blows that all out of the water in reality.
We had a fair amount of vacant positions for a good portion of last year as we hired folks, so that's part of what's feeding that.
That's what I have. Any other questions?
What was the customer we lost in the revenues? Or commercial or anything?
Down south in your area.
That's
That's
Pactec,
Pat that completely left.
pretty much.
Has anybody reached out?
There.
Pactec's
Gone. Has anybody reached out to Phil to whether we can supply them power or anything?
Anybody, nobody new is in there. Is that what you're asking? Nobody knew.
The city
Last
had-
time we talked to them, that they were looking to lease that building, but had not found anybody yet, and if that were to happen, we would reach out to them and serve them, but yeah, we haven't heard anything.
That takes quite a bit of property, all the way to that church.
Yeah. They sunk some money into it when they bought it too, so it's not a bad place.
Yeah, need some really, really nice flooring.
Yeah, great license.
Very nice floors in there.
Did they move elsewhere?
They consolidated into a different plant in Eugene, off of Bertelston, that used to be off of Irving, I think. And so I think they took the two plants and put it in a much bigger spot. So it was a big investment that they made down there.
Is warehouse or just remodeling Cottage Grove or expanding?
My understanding is they're rebuilding the plant, but it will not be a load increase at the end of the day. Makes it more efficient.
And require 80 more loads a day,
Yeah,
Wow. What are they now,
214.
per day?
it is a good sign that they're investing there, so that this will be around for quite a while.
Their problem is the traffic. Yeah, they've changed it around. You no longer, you exit on 99 now instead of turn around and go back out Latham, and they're having problems with that.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. I think Rob has a thing, our power supply results. He snuck this in here right before the meeting.
20 minutes ago.
I don't know if this is allowed.
Must have heard we had cookies. You must have heard we had cookies.
Get it in by. Yeah, I wanted to just quickly highlight some things. We did not do a 2023 power supply report, cost of power report. This was just kind of like post-storm, 2023 was nuts, we didn't want to look at it anymore, so. So we didn't do this last year, so I kinda wanted to do it, it's the last full year of the slice block product, and it'd be nice to look at it. I did wanna highlight a couple of these slides, but we don't have to go through them all, but it might be more interesting than the provider of choice content, so. So we could also spend a lot of time here if you want. So just quickly on the water year, we've got a couple of slides here, just to show, I think we've talked about this, but we track all the way back to late forties. It was pretty poor water year. We had 2 in a row. This year, I think this was updated like 2 weeks ago. So we've come down a little bit off of that 89% of normal number, but still much more positive than last year. We kind of look at, basin conditions over years. It didn't start the year very well, and only got marginally better from there. You remember the ski resorts didn't open until like January 1st, 2024. So that's kind of how it looked over the important months of the water year. We budgeted, one of the ways in which we build a very conservative budget is we budgeted P1 slice, which is kind of 1 in 100 bad slice years. And so you can see it's way down there. And when you start the year, it was, we get this big boost, and then we track it over the year. And we got a little bump down when Bonneville kind of releases their study on like what the water basin conditions are, what they expect for output over the year. But we ended the year at about 7217 average megawatts, which again is overall, but much better than kind of our P1 slice scenario. We have to really drive our planning, our resource down to kind of produce kind of poor net power cost numbers. That's just kind of the function of the modeling that TA helps us with. But that's kind of explains the big jump around there. On the pricing side, this is 10 years of monthly market pricing. You can see what happened in January during the MLK events. We saw one of the highest months of over the last 10 years overall. So that was pretty positive for us because we sold a lot of power during that month. We had our outages. It also created a really positive kind of mark-to-market position on our hedges for the year. So we started the year really well, and all the pricing for the rest of the year kind of goes with that. But what happened over the rest of the year is that pricing just kind of tanked. It kind of hit that high water mark at the end of January and really went down from there. And so during the summer, when we take out all these big capacity positions and we're having to protect ourselves from big summer blowouts, we were paying the banks hundreds of thousands of dollars a month just to kind of cover those poor positions. I think we bought at $160, $150. And you can see where it was in July, August. We just didn't see any pricing events, and it was a real stable year overall after January. On the load side, Sarah talked about the retail sales side. This is kind of the same picture. You see that we started out with this big gap at the beginning of the year and never really recovered, but got to 95% of our load budget for the year. On the cost side, I've got 2023 on the right and 2024 kind of in the middle there. Our average slice block costs about $41. We'll compare that to what the load following price. And Short Mountain kind of saw a little bump up, as did White Creek, which is a contractual kind of annual increase in price on the gross side. On the net, 2023 saw much higher pricing overall, and that's kind of how our resale deal is structured, where if there's, if the index price is higher, we're able to sell at a higher price. So since we saw that kind of that dip in market pricing, we weren't able to sell White Creek. So we didn't get as much at a higher price. We didn't get as much value for it here. So I think just drawing your attention to the bottom box there on net power costs between 23 and 24. Luckily, flat. We saw a drop in net power cost between 23 and 24. So driving it closer to $41. We took a different look. Mitch really helped out with this. He's built some cool models that help us understand what our loads look like under the load following rate schedules. So what we did is we took a look at how 2024 loads would have performed under the load following contract and the rate schedules that are in place today, or I'm sorry, last year. And so you could, all the tier 2 costs that we would have had are built into that number. So instead of like a comparison of our net power cost to just the tier 1 costs, all of it's in there. So you can see that that margin is a lot closer. The gray bars are slice block costs over the life of the contract, way back
Yep,
when.
yep.
And the tier one price is the gray line. So it's hovered around $35. But with this new method, you can see we're closer to $40, which compares much better to kind of where slice block costs have been. It just means that because we have such a large amount of above high watermark load, we've got to serve that with a higher tier 2 costs or tier 2 prices. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Looked pretty good back when I used to do that job.
Oh,
Look at
wow.
all those $30.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a spendy taste.
So you look at the $40 number and for 23 and 24, and you wouldn't even think there was anything going on behind the scenes, but it was absolute carnage to try to manage to those numbers. So I think it would have saved us all a lot of stress if we'd known. We're gonna end up okay.
You never know that ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's gonna make a big difference on your budgeting.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the
You're gonna
impact.
have a $4 million.
Big impact.
Well, even Sarah's numbers there with that big power cost, $5.8 million. That's what we had to hold back just in case there was one of these blitzes. So, yeah, with load following, that all goes away. We have some more certainty here.
You guys probably find this interesting. This is what Short Mountain did last year. A little over $60 a megawatt hour. You can see the kind of the yellow bar towards the bottom there. That's kind of the growing well maintenance costs. So the investments in maintaining our gas collection system. And even you can't really tell the difference between the blues, but the lighter blue, you can see that's the generation maintenance category. So you can see we're still making a lot of investments through last year and kind of maintaining those engines. I think that's going to be a question this year, and when we get to budget, is how much makes sense to probably just to keep things safe out there.
Yeah.
But not more than that, but
Great tape.
we'll see.
Yeah.
And lastly, is just White Creek. Those are all the numbers that you can see. Like, gross cost, that's our contract number for last year, 7184. This contract ends at the end of 27, so we've just got a few more years of this. We'll do a big kind of postmortem on the whole thing, and it'll be like Black Rose. That's the ring to that party.
Since we market that power and don't use it, does that mean it doesn't come to load on our BPA standard load following?
Right.
So it's exempt because we don't use it.
So it'll
We don't integrate it into our load, so
exactly.
it doesn't bother.
It'll cost us $20 more a megawatt hour
If we
on top of that
integrated
71
Wow.
to integrate it.
it.
So
That's a no-brainer.
yeah, so absolutely, and that relationship with TEA will stay the same. They'll schedule it. They'll handle all the resale deal.
Okay.
In fact, next year we'll be bundling the product with its rec or its environmental attribute, and so we'll hopefully be able to sell it at a little bit of a premium. We've been doing that a little bit this year, but it'll get a little bit more formalized next year.
They're going to IOUs that don't need bottled power.
They're sending it to California, but it's kind of a we don't.
Who knows where it really
Yeah,
goes.
those wrecks have really gone up in value though. They used to
Yeah,
be-
this year it's $45. Well,
So-
sorry, it's a good.
So we have to buy White Creek, but then it'll never come here. It gets sold. It's not,
Hold off.
will be part of our
agreement.
No, it never was, which is good because what we, as we've seen with Short Mountain, once it's in the contract, it's very hard to get out. So, yeah, it was good that we never did
Any other questions? On here.
that. All right,
we gonna find enough resources? That's the question.
everybody's wondering.
We're assuming they know what they're doing, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope not.
We can
Wanna
quickly
go-
go through this one?
Go to Bonneville here,
Yeah, so this is kind of the last engagement that we have on provider of choice, and next week we'll we've got an open invitation right now, or tentative invitation to our Bonneville account exec to come down next week. And we kind of wanted to talk, I wanted to talk about that, and open question at the end of this set of slides, whether or not we want to have him down, and what you guys would like to hear him talk about. I told him that I don't think we need a lot of song and dance about provider of choice or his products. He's doing that to some other utilities, going through, like, describing all the products and describing the process. I assume that we're kind of past that at this point, and I think the resource. Sorry. No, I mean, I hope that's not.
If he did that, it'd be like,
Yeah.
that's what I meant, not you.
But I think the resource future at Bonneville is interesting. I said that that might be a good topic that you guys might like to hear from him about. We'll have a vote on this resolution next week, but I think that would be a nice segue into like the next stage. Like we're going to be signing up for a load following contract, and there's going to be 140 other or more utilities doing the same thing. How is Bonneville going to be? It's kind of tier 1 obligations and tier 2, because there'll be a lot of customers putting tier 2 load on them. Yep. You want to do that?
If he's offering, I mean.
I need it confirmed.
If you really want to stand there. It's always good to hear from BPA, they haven't been down for a while.
Yeah.
Make them learn their stuff.
Yeah,
We can do that.
I don't know, assuming they can travel, they weren't allowed to travel for a while.
Yeah, no, he can do it. We could also have him here in the fall, like for like a ceremonial signing.
We want somebody bigger than that.
Yeah.
We should get the.
Shoot higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cooper.
Yeah.
Higher. Okay.
140 different customers have to do that.
I think that's what happened last time. Steve Wright came down and signed it in this room, and actually Scott Coe was with him. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yep.
Yeah, Patty probably remembers that.
Patty was there yet?
She muted herself out. You're muted. It's good.
Can you hear me now? Am I not? All right, it says one and it says what it is, but yes, Steve Wright did come down.
Yeah, remember that. Remember seeing pictures.
Yeah.
Back when you're in junior high.
I was around.
I'm just.
So just quickly reviewing the process, I like to do like a retrospective now that we're kind of towards the end. Again, these contracts are 20-year deals that, and the current one is expiring at the end of September 2028. The next one will be a 19-year deal that's 17 years of power deliveries. This provider of choice thing is it's what Bonneville called the initiative for developing these new contracts. A lot of new stuff went into a multi-year process that kind of culminated in this policy that was published last March. And since then, they've been really focused with a lot of the custom utility advocacy groups like NRU and BPC and WAPEG and then the bigger utilities too, and the more vocal utilities to develop contract templates. So the actual people contracts, the products themselves and all the design oriented associated with them, and the rates. So today they're called tiered rate methodology, and now it's got a new fancy name of the PRDM, Public Rate Design Methodology. That's what's been happening. Importantly for us is we've got kind of a new tier 1 eligibility number. So contract high water mark is what defines the amount of tier 1 power that we can get, low cost good stuff. And it's going to be calculated next year. We have an estimate of what it's going to be, but it'll be officially calculated next year and set for the entire term of the contract. So we've got, a load above that tier one eligibility number. And so the question really is, how do you serve that above high watermark or above contract high watermark load? You can do it with tier two rates or with non-federal resources or a combination of both. Since we're gonna have a bunch at the beginning of the contract, we're probably gonna elect to have to serve it with both, just to have this option available as new resources get developed in the region. Who knows what's gonna happen, and just that we're not gonna have any non-federal resources that we'll bring to the table at the beginning, but we could over time. So right now it'll be like 100% tier two and 0% non-federal resources, but that could change over time. We'll have some more elections next year about what kind of tier two, and so we'll bring those in here that time. But there'll be some options available. Like, do we want to just sign up with a blank check for the entire thing and say like, give us the long-term tier two option, or we want to go rate period to rate period? Well, there'll be other options.
So quick thing I want to mention, and basically, practically speaking, our only ability to fix do anything with our power costs is to try to shape the peak load in some fashion.
It's really limited, right?
And now we've got the ability to really know what those numbers are, and what it costs us exactly, rates if we don't do that.
Yeah.
The only variable is loads, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of talking about this yesterday.
So we focus on that rather than figuring out where we're gonna find power.
Yeah, we kind of wish Bonneville would send an even bigger price signal. Right now, it's there, but it's not enough incentive a lot of the time to really do like a time of use rate or something like that. So that could potentially develop down the road. Just talking to Mia yesterday about this, because there's so many people going to load following that previously were looking at different types of load flex programs where you can shift load from one time to the next. We don't necessarily have that same incentive now as non-slicers. So Bonneville may eventually decide that there's enough benefit to their resource program to incentivize.
They encourage it.
Yeah, but we'll see where that
gets low hanging fruit from their point of view.
It's probably just as cheap, if not cheaper than some of the supply resources they're trying.
Totally, and energy efficiency has done for a really long
Yeah.
time.
No, I understand that, yeah.
And so I think it becomes more important, the types of energy efficiency become, just like we've done over the last decade.
Yeah.
The demand saving stuff important, but these new programs that are like demand response or time of use rates, like hopefully those become valuable to them too, and they really need to offer like specific programs. Not in addition to a price signal, but they need to like put the infrastructure behind those new programs like they put behind energy efficiency.
Yeah. So what we're doing here this fall is an interim.
Yeah, it's the last 3 years of the current contract.
Right.
Oh, right, the product switch?
Yeah.
Yes.
So these are two separate decisions.
We'll be 28 before it really is new.
Yeah, right. And if you remember, we were forbidden from moving back to slice under the contract, at least initially. So the choice really for the next contract is, do we remain a load follower, do one of these other products that's kind of similar to slice, but maybe not even as good.
Yeah.
So there kind of wasn't a big choice to make here. We did, maybe I'm stealing all your thunder.
Don't talk anymore.
All right, keep going.
So as the tier, so the tier one stuff is important because that sets the amount of like fixed power that we can get. And it changed, it's expected to increase quite a bit, mostly because of Short Mountain going away. And but also there's some other little adjustments that happen because of conservation that we've done. Bonneville, remember there was this big conversation about setting the system size, where the number is going to be, and 7250 was the final number, and that's slightly larger than what they've done in previous years, and so we get like a proportional kind of increase with everybody else.
What does tier two power cost about right now, roughly?
Right now it's about $70.
Pretty good jump though.
Yeah. 68.
68, 69.
Yeah. So some of the numbers, how we got to these numbers is we worked with TEA and the IDEA group. I remember, if you remember back in August, you guys directed us to join this group that was exploring developing this joint operating entity. I don't have any of that information in here. I put a little bit of it into the memo. But the kind of the analytical result of that was that we got this model that gave us estimates of what our costs were going to be under a couple different products. The result of the idea thing was that there were only one or two utilities that were ready to join that type of thing. And it just, it has not yet kind of grown adequate legs to kind of get up off the ground. I hope it does, because it would be really nice for an option for utilities to join something like that. And it'll be hard to kind of get up off the ground in the middle of a contract. So I'm hoping that somebody like Idaho Falls and maybe Lower Valley Energy out of Wyoming, some of those utilities like that can put something together and have it be an option. If Bonneville just goes completely off the rails, here's an option that you can join up with. And the numbers really didn't, again, because there wasn't enough infrastructure to get off the ground. And the numbers weren't really super compelling anyway. Like, none of that stuff is in here. We're just not going, we're not recommending going down that road. So what is here is just, I've kind of split out our tier one costs under two different products, the load following stuff and the block with shaping, plus this PLVS service, or this peak load variant service, is like a capacity product that you're gonna you have to buy with the load following product, but is an option for this block with shaping product. I mean, the amazing thing here to me is that these products are almost identical, tier one costs, right? There's really no difference between the two. There's slightly different demand charge because of the way that they figure your demand charges, the billing determinant they use, but there's really no difference on the tier one side. The question is, like, how do you, what is the cost to serve the above high watermark load that we have? That's, you know, it could be, I mean, by the end of the contract, it'll probably be almost 20 megawatts, 15 megawatts. So we'll have quite a bit over, and especially considering if we annex a new service territory. But so that's really the question is, what is the cost to serve above high watermark load, and what are the other costs? One of the big ones is the RAP cost, right? And the cost to participate in that program. As a load follower, Bonneville covers that, and it's embedded in the cost to provide that product to utilities. For other products, it's either you don't have to participate, but if the rest of the region is, right, it probably makes a lot of sense. So there's a kind of standalone cost there. And plus there's the risk management costs, stuff that we've been paying TPA. It's almost $1 million a year now. So over the course of the contract, it can grow pretty big. So the load following product is slightly more expensive in this case, but what we didn't show here is just the range of outcomes. And there's what we've dealt with over the last couple of years. We're really familiar with this, like budgeting. That remains with the block with shaping product. You get a block, it's shaped a little bit to your load, but anything above that, you've got to go out in the market and buy, right? And so you've got to prepare for big swings in price. You've got to take out these hedging positions. You've got to manage it a lot like a slice product. Plus, there's a lot of unknowns about what that day ahead market's going to really look like. And so there's again just too many. We think there's too many risks involved in that product, and so don't think it's a good recommendation.
The simple matter is sorry to interrupt, but the simple matter is the shorter of additional power is available in the Northwest, bigger risk there's going to be.
Yeah.
Simply.
Yeah, the risk is not going to get.
The question is, do we want that greater risk, or what's in it for us?
Or do we have the scale to manage that, or do we need somebody like BPA to help manage
Right.
that? Yeah.
Kind of want to I added this at the bottom here just to highlight like a particular year. This is the first full year of the contract. Load following is slightly cheaper that year. I think the way that the pricing forecast work, it's slightly higher at the beginning of the forecast and then kind of gets lower at the end. So I think that's why the block with shaping products is a little bit more, because our wholesale costs are slightly more that year. But I think overall, again, these products are really, really similar in price. And so you're kind of you go back to the qualitative stuff, the flexibility to certain budget to kind of meet other needs of the utility is the really, really big one. And the ability to kind of meet our capacity needs here, kind of cost effectively. So there's the resolution. I think we included as attachments to the memo. We'll vote on this next week. But these are the three kind of main reasons we put into this resolution. Talking about the firm capacity that Emerald needs and it's at predictable rates. The load following product provides that. Under expected conditions, the load following product is the least cost and least risk alternative, for sure. And it can increase budget predictability, avoid unnecessary rate pressures, and allow utility to pursue other strategic goals.
Well, I have another question. So if everybody's got tier one levels, we're going above high water mark. And we all are pretty darn sure that the high water mark needs are gonna get higher and higher in the next 20 years. That means more and more of Bonneville's load's gonna grow into tier two.
Pretty soon.
So the only question about that becomes, what can they do to offset those increases by finding the most efficient means to provide that power and power?
They really should be, we think they should be, so at the beginning of the contract, there's probably going to be a lot of market purchases. And that's how they serve a lot of it today.
Well,
Right, it's not-
It's not already. right?
Yeah, it's not steel in the ground resources.
No, I get that.
And it'll probably be a mix of that at the beginning, but over time, it's certainly, that's gonna get smaller and smaller. Their wrap obligation becomes bigger because their wrap obligation is at all load, it's not just tier one. And that requires steel on the ground.
I understand.
So I think, again, I think that's a really good question for them next week, if Kevin wants to come down.
What do you plan to do to find new
that.
resources for
Yeah.
the next 25 years?
And,
That's really the job they've taken on.
they need to get
Because
started.
everyone's gonna grow into tier two, period.
It's funny to see this come full circle because the whole reason that tiered rates exist and slice exists is because Bonneville historically has done a terrible job with resource development. You have the hydro system, but when they try to add to it, typically has not gone well.
They need a new camp.
The new plants being the worst example of that.
Yeah.
So we're kind of all coming back now and we're saying, well, we tried, we can't do it ourselves. We need Bonneville to go out and figure this out. So we'll see if they're up to the task.
They haven't done anything really to help make it easier, or cheaper to integrate new non-federal resources.
Inevitably, they'll have to do that.
Yeah, there's some small things, some small giveaways. I think we can add up to 5 megawatts. Is that right? There's like and retain our tier one, excuse me, eligibility. So that's something for utilities. They've continued to make it really, really difficult to add small projects. We're working with a 200 kW or it's 600 kW, but it's a small solar project in Johnson City that should be so easy just to put online, and they've made it so difficult. And I think, if that's getting repeated across the region, it's a really small project in the scheme of things. But if you were to add those up, just like you add up energy efficiency, right, it becomes a real thing. And so there needs to be a lot more done to kind of partner with customers on to make this happen.
Or it's like Lane Electric, are they load following or are they?
They work with a PNGC. So PNGC is the,
Their own buying group?
so it's like a big co-op group. So I don't think they're officially a GNC.
There is Pacific Northwest Generating Cooperative.
So do they have a?
Yeah, so they're going through some stuff right now. They're really heading in the direction of resource development on their own. PNGC is the one entity that says we're gonna build stuff. And some of the Latchleys and Lanes of the world are like, we're not super confident with that, we're not having load growth, and so we don't want you out there spending a bunch of money doing this stuff.
On the one hand, the growth. is
Yeah,
power, and
so-
some of them don't want because they don't want to pay for it.
We'll see. I think there could be some comers and goers with PNGC. We'll see where they end up.
So the others.
So they're like well, the DEA that we use.
Even more so, I mean, they have, like, Lane does not have a power contract with Bonneville. It all goes through
They go through
PNGC.
them.
So
Got
it's like a joint entity, like we've talked about.
They're roughly half our size, I think.
Yeah, right about that. So.
I
Yeah,
found that out from somebody I know.
me too. I think we'll see where they end up. They did pick up some big customers in Montana recently. Cool. But I think they're gonna diverge from some of these long time.
The idea that smaller co-ops and stuff don't wanna bother with Bonneville directly or feel like they're better off to go with it, was that how it became the name?
Yeah, I guess it's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of somebody like Blatchley, I mean, how many employees they have, right? It's 20, 30. Like, there's just not enough
Yeah,
staff, and they're probably one of the medium-sized ones.
yeah, they carved that part out, they don't have to deal with it directly, I get that.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
but yeah, if PNGC is going a different direction, some of them may break off.
I just want to highlight some of the others that we've been tracking. Snohomish PUD is recommending the following. They're going to continue. Snowflood, they're switching in October with like us, and they're going to continue with the low follower. We expect UWeb is making their recommendation tonight. Their board materials, they were recommending product X.
Super secret.
It's super.
Really? No
So we don't
kidding.
know.
So they'll like announce
Municipals
it.
don't have to have public meetings?
I mean, they do tonight. Like, go to the meeting, you can find out. But
They all wait to see how the movie comes out.
Sequel.
I gotta think for a sequel.
I think with them, it's a pretty big job situation over there. They've got a trading floor and other things, so you move away from sliced product and all of a
Plus
sudden,
generating your own power until recently.
Yeah. there's a fair amount of positions that would go along with that.
So there's a lot of utilities that got, every utility got this letter on March 17th, and we're kind of all in the middle of these types of engagements with our boards to make this product selection by June 18th. So I'd like to recommend us get our request in by the end of this month.
Agreed.
And I think we can write this letter up, request the contract from them with a load following product, and I think it'll get turned around on the first come first serve sort of
I agree.
basis. So we can kind of get this behind us.
We wanna be the good customer.
We'll be the best people.
So we need to get it signed officially by the 5th of December, and they say they're gonna get it turned around in like 3 weeks by the end of the year. So that's what to expect coming up next. I think it's funny. I know I appreciate you guys' patience, like going through this process. I felt like it was important to have these meetings and talk about this process, to at least look at these products. And I know this probably could have been one slide, just a load following spinning GIF that we could have just put out there as I'm stealing Mitch's joke here, but and this is, I think it's been important to walk through this and look at what.
So we're gonna be stuck for 25
It's a
years.
major decision.
It matters.
It's a major decision. When we went to Slice, it was a huge
Don't
deal.
break fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just
What are you
thinking,
gonna say?
wonder what the conversation was like.
It was a really big deal. We had multiple meetings with all the, resource committee
The
and
unknown rest of that.
we tried to do it in the year 2000. And at that point, our GM was new and said, we can't do this. It's too risky. Financial reserves. And so then we did it again in 2008 and actually pushed and went forward with it. So each time it's been a very monumental event. I'll say that this load following switch that we've done kind of took the air out of this decision, really. I mean, this would have been probably a much bigger deal if we hadn't switched products preemptively. It just wouldn't make sense to have done that and then turn around and do something different in this new contract. So, but I firmly believe this is the right path for this utility. Maybe there's another reality where resources got developed in the region and we had better options on our own, but that's just not the world.
Well, that's gonna happen.
I don't know, yeah.
All the regulatory issues going
Yeah.
on in this state.
We've got a challenge. You can read my 5-part series about it.
So is Bonneville considering more power from, what's it called, Northwest, the nuclear?
Energy Northwest.
Yeah, there's
Are they,
there's an
because they're
outbreak.
gonna expand that, aren't they?
Yeah, that's why we're going, the system size is going from 7,000 average megawatts to 7,250. That's the difference. It's
That's the
our
nuclear. Yeah, I don't think it's not.
I said the bad word nuclear.
Yeah,
It's
We gotta ship it from Washington.
Not as much as it used to be.
yeah. I think it's
Changing, there's a different.
You look at that, there's some really big dollars attached to that upgrade that they're making, but if you pencil it out over 20 years, it's a pretty cost effective resource. I mean, that's like, I don't remember what it was, billions of dollars that they're putting into that.
Yeah.
Any questions? All good?
So we're ready, so we'll bring that resolution forward
Yeah.
next month, yeah.
So are you gonna bring the BPA guy down?
Yeah, I'll see if he's still available. I had him penciled in.
Put it in the middle, well.
Yeah, that'd be nice to know, he won't come back.
Yeah, I'll give him 20-30 minutes. He may not want to. I know, I was saying like, talk about the resource stuff, and he's like, well, I'll bring the resource team, I'm like, I don't know, like.
That's way too.
You don't get out
There's some
much.
canned slides, you can just take the feedback back to the resource team,
Q&A.
but.
He didn't know the product well enough, he could just discuss it on the
Yeah.
fly without having.
He wants a fall guy.
Yeah, he wants the guy.
He's been awesome for us, Kevin, so we'll give him some props when he gets here. He's the one that shepherded through this product, so we don't show him. He's helped us on Fort Mountain.
Yeah.
That was him, that was him.
Yeah.
That's,
I think that's another good reason to bring him down, is to give him some thanks, actually, because
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's really good advocate for us.
Yeah.
And helping us through this
Well,
process.
considering in a way, we almost need them more than they need us, you know. The fact they're giving any
Yeah.
service is something to be appreciated.
Yeah, it's really flipped from.
They've got the flavor of the month.
When you
about it.
first got on the board, it was a totally different situation. We were threatening to leave Bonneville, and like we can get a cheaper market products.
Everybody's mad. I first went to the PPC meeting, thought, holy crap. What are these people?
This is a
doing? I don't
dysfunctional
wanna do this.
relationship.
Yeah, it was weird.
I remember the power rates discussion.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It was like mid-teens. We're like,
Yeah, where was the?
32.97 versus like 35,
I have a brief,
36.
I have a brief question. Did the Columbia pact with Canada get, I thought it got settled. Is that not true?
The Columbia River Treaty.
Yeah,
It did, and the mid-seas started making noise about something they didn't like, and
now
so,
with the Trump mess, it's all a big blow up.
Yeah. I don't know that it ever got settled.
I thought it said they settled it, I didn't know.
There was an agreement, and then the Grants and the Chelands of the world said it's not good enough for. So they were threatening litigation. I'm not sure if they actually did file or how that played out. I can try to find out and see where it's at.
Yeah.
One plug is, the reason we're doing 20-year contracts here is to lock this stuff down. I mean, there's always talk of privatizing Bonneville, there's talk of getting names coming out. It's a lot harder to do when you have 100 customers signed up on a 20-year.
Absolutely, you're right.
Kind of an odd segue, but I do again want to give kudos to Mitch for developing some really complex
Nice
rate
work.
models. He's become kind of our Bonneville rate schedule expert. I really appreciate having him aboard, make sense of all of this stuff. It's been really helpful.
We're using that moving forward here as we develop budgets for the future and rate assumptions. We're able to now see kind of how, if our load changes, how does that impact our power costs? Not something we had previously.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys. Good
Thank
job.
Yeah.
Made it through the big ones.
hey, purchasing policy.
I shouldn't catch that here. All of this. There we are. Now, these are gonna be fairly quick, so, I'll talk to this and chime in, anybody that's on the PRT that wants to talk. So this is one of my items. I just wanted to make you aware, kind of how we're dealing with, transformers in particular. So continues to be challenging. Distribution transformers are a bottleneck for the industry, have been since really late 2021, when we first kind of identified this problem. We've only seen a single manufacturer, ERMCO, that has been able to deliver over the past 3 years. So if you remember, they give us build slots where every quarter we send them the quantity that we want, and they lock us in with a bunch of other public power customers that they reserve spots for. When we've tried to rely on standard procurement process, like requests for proposals, we've really had issues with delivery, with price changes. So using that has put us at risk at times where we've accepted an order that would be here at a certain point and foregone, in some cases, this ERMCO offer. And that other vendor just didn't deliver. And in one case, it was like 3 years before we actually got anything. And
Yes.
they showed up with like markers saying leak on them, and it was quite a sight to see when they actually delivered them. So the point being, that we can get our hand forced when we use our regular procurement here, and in this scenario, it can kind of put us at risk. And so what we've been doing to avoid that, we've been using emergency procedures where we just direct assign to this vendor. That allows us to be able to keep our spot in the queue and not give up, what we know is a reliable provider. Chad has helped us with that. He had the documentation kind of wrote up originally. You'll notice when we bring these into the board for approval, they have that emergency provision in there. This is why. And so that's how we've handled it thus far. When we passed the new purchasing policy back in November, Chad actually drove this. He put some new language in there that gives us some more flexibility. And this is an effort of transparency to make sure you know kind of how we're handling this, because you approved these new procedures.
Mhm.
And we're gonna start using them. I just want to make sure that you understand exactly how that's working. So what this does allows us to forego the same formal processes that we've been doing with an emergency procedure. If the delay would jeopardize service to new and existing customers and the impact on favoritism and competition is minimal. You actually pre-approved some findings to this degree when you approved the policy. And I'll bring that up in just a second here. So Chad wrote it up to the effect of, inventory, goods and inventory have a meaningful effect on customer service, and delaying the receipt of them could put customers at risk. And the findings were in there as well about should be minimal favoritism, minimal impact to competition, because our purchasing agent is constantly monitoring and understanding kind of what the market looks like out there. So we've done for the first time we kind of documented and plan to use a finding here in 2025 that says this will be what's called a special solicitation, which is how it's listed in the policy. And we want to direct assign the order to ERMCO, and we're going to do it for the following reasons. ERMCO has a proven track record, meaning on cost and on delivery time. Delays could make it impossible to participate in that program, and the limited number of alternatives could put us at risk, being either unreliable in delivery or more costly than we had expected. Here's what the policy looks like. That may be a bit hard to read, but it's section 7.4 in the purchasing policy. Basically says, based on written findings, or declares the following cases of to be some special solicitations that can be awarded in any manner the GM deems appropriate, including by direct appointment or purchase. And then you can see section 7.4.12 has goods held in inventory. So it's kind of broad. Right now, we're only using it for transformers. We have a fairly good set of vendors for other things at this point, but transformers have really been the bottleneck that we're planning to use this for. And then the findings there were in section 12, where we just say again, delay due to solicitation and long lead times could impair our ability to obtain equipment and jeopardize service to customers. It's in the public interest to maintain inventory for new customers and existing customers, and it goes on. And then the findings on favoritism and competition will be minimal because the district will endeavor to find different sources for the good, and competition will be no greater when undertaking an alternative procurement process. So by the new policy, I think we're fine moving down this road. In an abundance of caution, we're actually going to put some additional documentation in place, and I included this in the packet. So there's some findings there that it's called a special solicitation finding. I wrote it up to say, under the guidelines here, citing the policy language, the GM finds it in the best interest of EPA to procure distribution transformers directly from ERMCO without competitive bidding process. This action is hereby authorized through the term at the end of the document. I didn't put the whole document in here, but this is covering us for the rest of 2025. So we'll look at this annually. And again, if the situation changes and we get another set of vendors that can actually deliver, we hopefully won't have to use this forever. But for right now, we feel like this is the route that's going to allow us to continue to provide service for customers.
Well, even if alternate sources start to open up, this will still be in the policy manual.
Yeah.
Accessible.
Is there, I would say there's a fair amount of leeway here that's been given to me on this. So I just feel like I should be as transparent as I can be when it's being used. We've not really done this before with the emergency thing, and this feels better than declaring an emergency all the time. So I think this is good, but I just want to be careful how I'm using it, because it does have the potential to kind of sideswipe certain state, findings and processes that are required. And so I don't want to have any of that happen. And by having this documentation, by sharing it with all of you, I think we're avoiding that. And of course, we'll continue to work with Chad to make sure that this is kosher.
This works for any piece of plant material we got.
Anything that's in our inventory that we
It comes
consider
up,
critical to
runs
the
into a
business. Yeah, yeah, so if we get into a situation with poles or something, I mean, we could also use this, then I would plan to do the same thing, come in here and tell you about it, document what we're doing.
So one more thing on build sheets. So you're buying a year's worth of transformer and you got delivery dates, is that your build sheet? Or you guaranteed to buy, take or pay?
Yeah, so we're basically, I think we're looking at Q4 already, Q3 or Q4 already, and putting that in Q. And so, you give them the sizes.
Yeah.
All that sort of thing.
So are we paying for them a year ahead of time?
No.
We
Pay
pay
when we
for
get
our delivery.
Okay, when we get them.
Yeah, perfect. So we get invoiced and then some of them have been over, some of these have been over the GMs, and we try to bring them in here and get you guys to sign off on, because they're larger numbers.
Getting any better?
Well, ERMCO is literally the calm and the storm at this time. We've reached out or got Eaton to kind of come and talk to us. And they said, oh yeah, we got slot builds and all that stuff. So we had a one-on-one with them, talked to like 3 or 4 other people. And they said, oh yeah, we got slot builds, we're all over it, we've up production. And I said, okay, I need you to meet spec, they kind of prove that. And the other thing is, they're not a bad product, but the other thing I said, you need to prove to me that you have customers. I need to talk to customers that prove that your slot builds are true. And I haven't heard a damn thing from them.
Yeah, so we create competition.
Yeah.
Right, but they haven't gotten back to me. I asked them, the next step is you give me a list of your customers that I can reach out to and say, have they met
I got
a
you.
quarterly slot
Makes
like
sense.
ERMCO has? Then I'll get you on the bid list, because I will not go down
No.
the road in 22 where I am
That's
having
definitely
these
something to
weekly
document too.
meetings
Yeah,
about.
well, that's
where
what we
this
do, we
goes.
say, there's just not a liquid market for this
Yeah,
stuff out
yeah.
there. One example that we did try early on was another manufacturer that way overcommitted themselves and just couldn't deliver to us and kept putting us off, saying, we'll get it, it never came. And so eventually we said, we're done, we're gonna cancel this order, and boy, was that a fight. You would have been proud of me. I had to get on a Zoom call and yell at somebody. It was pretty good.
What? I remember when this was bad. You got a ranch runner and then you got a shrub liner, different ground sleeves. But it's the same transformer, it's just physically different. It got so bad, we were digging up ranch runners.
Yep.
It was
I would say
way more
in-
money, the whole
In
crew.
2022, we were not in a good place.
No.
We had stopped work. We had said nothing leaves the yard without my sign off. It was to the point where these were like precious commodities.
And people paid.
Yeah.
And they were waiting for the house. The house is built, there's no
Yeah.
I
power.
remember when somebody came in and they were looking at our yard. and
Yeah.
You gotta throw this transformer, look at the girl, what?
Yeah, it was Mike Miller.
Remember that guy? Yeah.
Oh, I think that was Mike.
Yeah. Look at our yard. So anyway,
Garage.
we'll keep you posted if anything changes on this, but that's the current approach, and just wanted to make sure you were.
That's fine.
Thanks.
Yep.
Finance Rates Committee,
Yeah, we're on to the last one. You want me to do this? All right, this is pretty easy. So Brent Chavon, who's our longtime industrial customer representative on the committee, is retired. I think he's already retired, right? So we initially talked about adding his replacement to this committee. I think they want to make it a little more open, where it would be a warehouser representative, not necessarily just the GM that would be eligible.
He lives right, he's not very far from
Okay.
it. Yeah, he's.
So we'll see. That was the way that they discussed it with Tyler, I think, was having a warehouser representative. Yeah. I think it makes sense. They're our biggest customer. He's been really good about providing input. That's the most important thing, is just having somebody that will participate.
Yeah, right.
So with the board's consent, I guess that would be the proposal from staff, to just keep this as a warehouser position. Any questions, comments, or anything on that?
So we gotta vote? We have to vote on that?
It would be nice to, I don't know.
Like to move that we let it be on the board,
I second.
not very formal, but.
On the committee, yeah.
Good enough.
Yeah.
so I have a vote, please, to have a warehouser representative on the Rates Committee as industrial.
Aye.
Aye. Patty?
Hey, good.
Aye.
Thumbs up.
I see we're short of a commercial and institutional.
Yeah.
Too.
I was
Something
gonna,
Everybody needs to get thinking about.
I don't remember the last time we had a commercial rep on there, but we probably should think about it. Been a while.
Hello.
I'm sorry.
We used to have,
When we say commercial, what is the definition of that? I mean, is that like a restaurant? Is it the bank? Is it the what?
Business owner.
anybody that's not an industrial, any business that's not an industrial, so all but the
Okay.
largest
I had a recommendation offered to me yesterday from Robert Ball,
Okay,
and it was, the gentleman's name is Tom Johns, and he owns Territorial Seed out in London.
Oh, yeah.
very good customer.
That'd be a good example.
Yeah, and that group, him and George Devine and Robert Ball, they're all in a clique, and
Okay,
he would get right up to speed real fast. He hasn't
Not a big-
said yes.
It's not a big time suck.
No, but he'd enjoy it. He'd be a good one to have.
Okay.
He's a busy guy. Brian will like talking to him.
Yeah.
He sells a lot of seeds.
I know about their.
yeah.
Get a lot of seeds.
Yes, he does.
Sounds like a good option. I guess if y'all wanna think about it, maybe next week we can come back and reconfirm.
I would
those.
talk to him.
Okay,
I will.
that sounds good. And then institutional tends to be like churches and nonprofits, so schools. Actually, we did have a school rep for a long time out in Pleasant Hill. We used to have Tony and then there was Scott. Yeah, I don't know who we might think about, but which other schools do we have out there? Or
School district, Mission City School District.
yeah, give that some thought. If there's anybody you know at a school district, that might be a good place to go to.
Maybe I've been the fire district. Yeah, my area.
Andy Smith is not,
I think he decided to step down.
yeah, Ron Case, I don't ever seen or heard of him.
He hasn't been in a meeting for a long time.
So we'll
So
kind of over their feet.
Matt Bryson,
He comes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I need to find, I've got some ideas. So.
Yeah, if you have any residential spots you need to fill, be a good time to start calling.
I think yours has been updated, cause
Pardon?
you have Robert Jackson now, Ron Case is off. So there's been an updated version. Do you still have the one?
Residential business, we should focus on that.
So out of the committee, board member has X amount that we want out
I
of.
think you have up to three. Yeah.
So we don't need enough. We got Robert, George Devine, and
A couple of them are
I-
at large. It's on the list on the.
Well, you can have 3 residential and then there can be a commercial that's the board's
okay.
at large, so you can have 3 residential.
I found an ag guys case.
Yeah,
Something I know about.
yeah. We do hope to do those small group meetings again, probably in June.
But I think it's important to get, residential's a lot of our
Yeah.
styles. I think we gotta let more, as many people as we can fill those slots.
Yeah.
Make sure they get the right stuff.
Okay. Maybe we can confirm, we'll send the most up-to-date roster out to everybody before next week and then we can talk about it again. See if there's anybody else you wanna
Are
add.
we done with our normal docket, Mr. President? I have a quick thing I wanna tell
Yeah,
everybody.
then we are, well, yeah, well, there's public comment, but there's no public, so.
I want to tell you guys, I saw this on YouTube the other night, so it's true, if everybody knows. But they were complaining in California because they want to take away their solar panel credits at full retail rates there at PG&E. There's quite a squawk going on about it. And I'm not sure if it's a citizen advisory committee or exactly how it works in California, but one guy was in the solar business and he said that without his rate, when he's using the solar panels, he says his power commitment is $13 a month, so that's his base charge.
Yeah,
And I assume he's in some urban part of Central California. And he said he's gonna give up 45 cents a kilowatt hour power costs because of this and go back to a nickel. So
Wow.
they're paying 45-cent rates apparently, or at least for
Yeah.
part, I don't know if he's over speaking to make it look worse or whatever, but
no, I think that's their,
they
that's
got a
their,
$13 base charge and a 45-cent kilowatt hour charge. I wonder why they got budget problems.
I heard
You know?
PG&E's highest rate was 55 cents. On like their tiered
And
rate.
you wonder why Kaisa wanted to grab onto borrowing. Boy, that's a mystery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. I thought to myself, well, no wonder they got rate design problems and those shit.
Well, it's interesting that even California's backing off of that metering option.
Well, it's breaking the, cause everybody,
Yeah.
the numbers are clear, people are really steamed about it.
Yeah,
And they explain all the details,
Yeah.
besides, we all know all the details, so
yeah,
I just thought $13.45 was interesting info.
yeah.
Again, take it for what it's worth, it's just something I saw that. There are quite a few articles on there, so apparently it's a ruckus right now.
Yeah,
Some of them were news, videos
Yeah.
of news programs in the Bay Area.
it's been a big to do.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody has to believe the man's screwing them, that's kind of.
But that might be true. I got one thing about the scholarship program. 5 years ago or 2020, this board awarded a scholarship to my son, and he got hired at Springfield Utility Board yesterday.
Oh, really?
One down, one down.
Wow.
He works for David Harris. That's who he's working with.
That's awesome.
David's retiring soon, I think, too.
That's why he got the job.
He's gonna take David's job.
That's what they're grooming that.
Nice.
I don't know that he's gonna jump in that fast, but
No, what
he's changed a lot since you internship here. It was interesting, EPUD is very well thought of.
Yeah.
At staff at Springfield Utility.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Interesting.
It was. We have a new employee whose wife works at, she came over here, you tell she loved it.
So it was interesting, the interview process has a board member on it. It took 2 months for this process to go through and a board member on the interview process, but
I think that's a little bit of post GM.
Chase
transition
asked
stuff.
in the meeting, well, what's it gonna change with Jeff Nelson? And he said, we'll probably get better. They said it just flatlined in the whole meeting.
Wow.
What is he doing? What's the job?
He hasn't really had time to explain it to me because, he's got a whole nother job.
It's energy efficiency, right, though?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's more to it. It's in the
Okay.
scheduling.
Yeah,
A lot of it this job opened up because the program's coming from Bonneville.
okay,
They anticipate coming from Bonneville.
all right.
So it might just be residential. They're not real active in conservation over there.
It costs money.
Yeah, I'm nickel a kilowatt hour.
Well, conservation
Why
in this-
conserve?
In this new purchase we're doing, conservation makes most sense.
Yeah, it's the tried and true. We tell everybody, energy efficiency first. All this solar stuff's great, all this gold is
I
great.
absent any new source of
Yeah.
resources, we're gonna have to go back to rate scheduling.
Yeah,
All I know is
The industry, I don't mean just us, like,
Yeah.
it's just gonna have to happen.
he gets
Hey,
90,000
guys.
for salary, he pays me back.
I want to share a really big compliment. I've shared this with Kyle that I got for EPUD, but I was in town at a shop and an eWeb guy came in. He had to do something with the meter at the shop. And the kid that was working there left the room and I said, so you must be with eWeb. And he goes, yeah. I said, well, I'm with EPUD. He goes, oh man. He says, that's the gold standard. We all want to work there. I just thought that was so wonderful. So I just want to share that with everybody.
People don't have to say anything if they thought otherwise.
Yeah.
When they volunteer, you kind of believe
that was really special. Thank you for sharing.
It is cool.
that.
Sure, absolutely.
Good to get that feedback.
Anything else?
No, we got done. I'll just note, we got done in an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh.
Perfect.
There you go, good.
The longer we stay together, Thanks, don't really get very longer.
8:30. You got excited?
Oh.
Yeah.
I can see it.
I can see it all.
You can see it. It'll tear.
Yeah. They'll.
But I can see it.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a. I know exactly what happened.